I think the numbers are going up, so we'll just give it another minute or so. So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. I'm just going to see. I can see some people who have joined. We're going to try and keep this session fairly confidential because obviously there's some people that are joining that may not be, people may not know about their job search, John. So I won't do
Sure.
any shout outs. But for
No,
everybody on, I will cover this again, but just to let you know that we've tried to keep it so that people can't, if you want a Q&A, I think that comes to me and maybe people won't be able to see what you're asking just to keep it a bit more anonymous. So we'll see how that sort of goes. Um, so I guess the other thing is if you don't want people to know that you're on, you've probably maybe just watch the chat or the Q&A. And we will be doing some polls. So they are anonymous. So that's fine. Okay. I think we might be good to go. What time are we? Yeah, I think we're sort of a couple of minutes in. So, all right, I'll kick off. Well, yes, good morning or good afternoon, and thank you for joining this webinar, which is Elevating Your Executive Resume with John Baker and myself. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we work today and pay respect to elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to First Nations people joining us today. So, a brief introduction from me. I'm Angela Franks, the partner for Fraser Jones in Australia. Fraser Jones, if you don't know us, we're a global HR recruitment and search business operating across the whole spectrum of HR or people and culture. It's been a mixed year, I think, for a lot of people in the HR space if you've been looking for a role or trying to hire. So if you're thinking of a move for yourself or hiring for your team and want some information or insights on trends, or you need to partner with a recruiter, please do get in touch. So for anyone who's been tuning into our webinars for a little while now, you'll know that I do like to try and keep the topics fresh and varied, but I do like them to be a little bit uncomfortable. And I think everybody finds the job of writing about themselves a bit uncomfortable. So I will hand over to John in a minute, who's going to talk about all of that, but introduce himself. You may know John from his days as managing director of the Next Step and the Safe Step, but I've known John for 20 years now. I was fresh faced off a plane in London. John hired me, so thank you for that. But John has an executive search background and has been more recently focused on executive coaching and CV writing. And if we have time at the end, I'm going to go through some of those market insights that I have and also some top tips on things that we see when people are looking for new opportunities in the market and especially in the present climate. So I will hand over to John. Like I said, feel free to put some questions in the Q&A if you want to remain anonymous and maybe you may not be able to participate, but I'll do my best to monitor them. So everyone, we are recording the sessions, so videos are off and microphones are set to mute. And then we have some polls. They're anonymous, so please do participate in those as well. But over to you, John.
thanks, Angela. Yes, 20 years. That's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So, yes, John Baker. I've spent 25 years, or just over, in executive search, specialising for a while, or a fair chunk of that as well, in the HR market, both in the UK and Australia. I walked away from executive search about 2.5 years ago. Part of the market that really interested me throughout my time in executive search was firstly the need for coaching for executives, both from a performance point of view, but particularly going through that career transition phase. And I suppose after 25 years, I've seen a lot of CVs and a lot of resumes. And frankly, I felt that there was a real issue for a lot of people in being able to write their own. To be honest with you, I really struggled to write my own. And when Ange asked me to write a bio for this session, I sort of lots of head scratching. But certainly, I've found that a lot of executives come to me to either validate what they have already written, or in some cases, a number of cases, to write their resumes for them. Um, and it's a very active market at the moment, really, because the executive market is incredibly competitive, regardless of whether you're an HR professional or a finance professional or an MD. So that's what I've focused on. I combine it with travel around Australia. So I'm currently sitting on the beach, not literally, in Western Australia, just south of Perth. So should we crack on to the first poll, Angela?
I put myself
Okay.
on mute. Sorry, there we go.
Well done. Well done.
There we go. We've got a poll as well. Here we go. So, what is the difference between a CV and a resume? Oh, I can't
Yeah.
vote.
No, nor can I.
All
Wouldn't be
right.
fair, would it?
Yeah. So we'll let everyone quickly jump onto the poll, and Mel will share the results in 1 second. What do you think it will be, John? Oh,
Um,
I reckon the same thing.
it's very interesting because it depends on it. It really does depend on market,
Mm,
to be honest with you. And I'll say a little bit about that when people have voted. Um, and So depending upon where you live in the world and the market that you are looking to enter will have will make a difference. And
mm,
also, I'll say it, um, there are nuances between subsections of a national market, and that's very interesting result. Actually, that's
yeah.
incredibly interesting. Um, and that really reflects, I think, the views of, I think, the majority of people uh, on this webinar today are Australian based. All
Mm,
right. Um, if you were in the US, there is an absolute difference between a CV and a resume. And in, dare I say it, the clue is in the name. So curriculum vitae, um, basically translated from, I think, Latin, means whole of life. So it covers your whole career. Um, Whereas a resume is French for summary. So if you're in the US market, they are fundamentally different. Whereas in the Australian market, they tend to have been sort of become words or phrases for all and everything.
mm,
Okay. My view is that a curriculum vitae is longer, and I would structure it, and we'll talk about structure later, structure it differently. Whereas a resume, if I'm writing a resume for someone, I'm aiming to use no more than 2 pages. And again, we can talk a little more about this, but it in separate markets they're fundamentally different. And I actually think in Australia, if you went to apply for a role, say within government tends to expect more of a CV, even though they call it a resume. They're expecting a longer document. Whereas if I was similarly, if I was applying for a role, an executive role in private equity, there is no way I would do more than 2 pages because and we'll talk about audience later, but it's basically about the expectation of those different markets,
mm.
um, both within Australia or if you venture out into other global markets, there will be a different expectation.
And then, John, I
So
think we were, yeah, I think we were also going to talk about, and you might be covering this now, is like the role of the resume in the hiring process, because that obviously ties back into what you're going
yeah,
to, how you're going to
yeah.
structure it.
So 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 let's well, I'll just use the term resume for now. A resume is a marketing document, and that's how you need to view it. Um, and you've and when I look at a resume, it's about saying, okay, this is a marketing document, and it's about marketing the person to someone who may be interested in you. All right. So the key thing is to say, what is my audience? Who am I trying to sell myself to? Because for me, the resume has one and only one role, and that is to be noticed, okay, and invited in to discuss a role. All right. It's a door opener. It gets you through the door. It won't get you the job, but it gets you in the door to start the conversation. That's its primary role. If it doesn't get you through the door, then it's failed. Effect because you're not, it's like you've not been invited to the dance. Um, so that's it for me. That's its purpose, and your mindset has got to be around what does that need to contain to get me noticed. And that's not about flashy graphics or putting a photo in the corner. In fact, I would say, please do not put your photo on your resume, because photos on resumes allow people to apply bias. So, you might think that you are, that a photo of you is really engaging, but it might be that the other person doesn't find that engaging at all. So don't give them the opportunity to say no just because you put your photo on the resume. But its purpose is to get you noticed.
And John, what about LinkedIn then? So, because obviously you need probably your photo on LinkedIn, don't you? Because it looks odd without it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And
mm,
but one thing, as I'll also say, it's interesting with LinkedIn. Um, there are a number of executives who choose not, particularly because of their level in organizations, um, who may well have a LinkedIn page but don't participate
mm,
within
mm,
LinkedIn. Um, and and I've had this conversation particularly with sort of CEO level people in major listed companies. They may have a page, but for them that doesn't, it's got nothing to do with the job search for them,
mm,
because they're relying on a network of people,
mm.
um, either chairs of organizations or the major headhunters who they will know and who will know them.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a tool, and trust me, it's a very, very good tool. But for some levels of executive, it's more of a curse, to be honest with
Mm,
you, and it's
mm,
not something that's going to help them. They'll project their views potentially through their company rather than through their personal views online.
mm. Okay, that's interesting. All right, is there any more to say here, or should we move on to the next poll, which is about
Um,
the structure?
let's move on to the next poll, I think,
Okay,
because this will sort of
do
open up
that.
the debate a bit further.
Yeah. Um, I'm just trying to get to the slide as well. Here we go.
Yeah.
Um, oh, we talked about this already. Sorry. Here we go. All
Yeah.
right, so we've got how should a resume be structured? First page is key. It's all about the audience, fill in the gaps, all of the above. Oh, I
Yeah.
think all of the above, John.
Um, yeah. Well,
I shouldn't
maybe.
say that. Sorry, I'm influencing the crowd.
Right. Um,
All right, wait and see what everyone says. All right, I won't give my opinion on the next one.
stop leading
I know, I know. Naughty.
yeah.
The polls ain't right. The results will pop up now. Yeah, sorry.
Um,
So all of the above is the most popular.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and yes, you're right. It is all of the above. The first page is absolutely key. If you think of this document as a marketing document, I give people the example and say, okay, you go out to your post box and there's a piece of direct marketing in your post box. You look at it, and most people give it about 2 or 3 seconds, and then it goes in the bin. Um, so, and that's because direct marketing is obviously it's just scattergun. But you want someone to look at your resume and fairly quickly, and by fairly quickly, I'm talking in under a minute, to say to themselves, I want to read the rest of this, because it has impact. Now, that again, as I said before, that impact isn't fancy graphics, colored borders, photos, and stuff like that, but it's the words that you use. And we'll talk about audience. I think after the next poll, but you've got to think about who it's going to. And I think I've covered some of the structural stuff for that. And let's just slay a bit of a misnomer here. There are 1,000 ways to structure a resume. Okay, and honestly, you could ask 10 people who do what I do, and they'd probably give you a different answer or nuance of it. If I'm talking about a resume, I'm talking about no more than 2 pages. If you're talking about a CV, I'd recommend 4 pages. But a CV would be used in a very specific scenario. And actually, and I would say to everyone who's listening to this, by all means have a resume, but have a CV as well. And just this is a bit of a hack for you. When headhunters write a report on you that's going to the client, okay, they want the detail that's in your CV. When they're screening you to see whether they want to meet you, they're just looking at your resume. Okay. So have both. Also, if you're applying into government, the CV document is probably more relevant to that market than a resume. CV, and in that case, most definitely a covering letter. A director general of a government department said to me not too long ago, he said, I put more weight on the cover letter than I do on the CV, which is interesting. They do read them. So 2 pages, what I would say, the front page needs to tell me 3 things: who you are, what you are, and what you've done. And an easy way of saying that as a structure is the who are you is your name and contact details at the top of the page. What you are, I tend to write this in a text box with a border so that it draws the eyes in. And in effect, it's that executive summary that people read, and obviously the words in that summary are incredibly important, that it engages someone to go, this is interesting. And then the rest of that first page, or a proportion of it, is a very brief career summary. Company, job title, about 1 or 2 lines on who the organization are, and 1 or 2 lines on your remit. Literally no more than that. The problem when I read a lot of resumes is I read that profile bit, if someone's actually done that, and they all sound the same. And I call it the curse of blah, blah, blah. Might say, Helen is an experienced HR professional with 20 years experience in corporate markets. She is a collaborative leader. It's just, they all sound the same.
Yeah, I was going to say this, John. It's just, there's nothing to stand out about that.
No, and it's the words, and the problem is Angela, and this is where I think people struggle, is that most people don't have an ego the size of an aircraft carrier. All right. Most of us are reasonably humble, and don't like to pump up our own tires. So we downplay it. We
Mm,
downplay who we are. I do it myself. I find it easier writing a CV for someone else than I do writing it for myself, to be honest with
mm,
you. Um, and um, and some people will say, "Oh no, that John, that just sounds a bit too, me." And I say, "Well, that's all right. Do you know how we can solve that?" And I did this recently, with a CEO. I just said, "You start off that profile by saying Bob's referees would say," and then
mm.
go into it. So it's deflecting it as, this is what people say about me, not what I'm saying about myself. Do you
Yeah.
see what I mean?
Mm, mm.
Um, so that's
The other
just a
thing
tech.
too, I think it's a bit about the balance, right? Because I do say to people sometimes, like, if I was to describe myself, I would say I've got 25 years in recruitment experience in London and Sydney. Like, so people know what they're dealing with at least, but that's kind
Yeah,
of full stop and then say other things. So it's kind of that like set the scene, but very
yeah,
briefly.
yeah, yeah. And that's fine. But
Oh,
to go, this person looks interesting. Nobody likes to not be interesting. If it's blah blah blah, then um, it's people want to meet interesting people. They don't want to meet people that sound bland.
mm,
So unfortunately, if your profile sort of description of yourself is bland, it's bland.
mm,
Um, so I think that's something that from a structural point of view, um, and my technique with the second page of the resume, I'll talk about during audience, um, because, and this is where, for me, the resume differs really quite strongly from the CV. Um, the CV tends to have a profile section, maybe a career summary, and then it goes sort of reverse chronologically through maybe the last 10 or 15 years of the career, um, and it's sort of with listed, bullet points after them. The
mm,
way I approach a resume is really quite different. Um, and it comes down to this whole thing about audience.
mm.
It might be a good segue.
Yeah, because into the next poll.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I want to talk about audience. I'll cover, before we go into that, I'll cover the thing about gaps.
Mm,
Um, we've all seen it. We look through a resume and we've got a job from 20 to 2025, and then the previous role finished in 2018, and there's no explanation of why there is a 2 year gap. Now that 2 year gap can anything be from, I couldn't find a job, I was taking maternity leave, I was serving a jail sentence. There's a whole plethora of things that could fill that gap of 2 years. And most of them are perfectly acceptable, perfectly normal, and just part of life. It may be that you've decided to um, be a caregiver for a parent who's terminally ill. There's so many. And if that's the case, put it in. Don't
mm,
leave the reader wondering why there's a 2 year gap in your resume. Um, some people will leave it blank and say, well, I can explain that at interview. But if you can explain it at interview, why not put it on the piece of paper?
mm,
You know, I would not think, in fact, I would think more of someone who'd taken 18 months off to care for someone, because that is a measure for me of their character.
Mm.
Um,
And John, the reason I wrote it's dangerous is because people make up their own stories if you don't tell them what actually happened, and you're not in control of that. You can't
no, no,
control what people imagine.
precisely. And it's, there's the old saying, you cannot control what a person thinks, says, or does.
Mm,
All right. So if and you have control, because it's your resume, to stop them thinking something that might not be true.
mm, mm. All right, let's do the next poll then, shall we? So this is about different versions. Should you have a different resume for different types of roles? Okay, so corporate C-suite, private equity, NED, government.
Yeah. And it's a 50-50 chance here.
Yeah. All right, we'll give it a minute for everyone to enter that. Sorry, I lost you before, John, because my internet connection went funny. So hopefully
Right.
it doesn't do that again. All right, there we go. Yay.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Um, Good. I'm glad that is the result, because um, this comes down to audience. All right. Yes, I honestly believe you need different versions. I don't think you necessarily need to do a complete rewrite for each role. Um, you might do a few tweaks, but um, the key thing is audience. So that example you gave, there where we've got the thing about, corporate, C-suite, private equity, non-exec directed, government, not-for-profit. The audiences are very different. So if I was doing um, for a C-suite role at exec level, it's either going to go to the CEO, or if it's a CEO role, to the chairman, or whoever's the um, sort of head of the board committee that covers recruitment. Um, that audience is very different to private equity, all right, because their motivations are different. All right. So in a large corporate leadership role, you probably, you're going to be putting in potentially stuff around ESG, governance, these types of topics, which are very relevant in that type of organization, because that's what the readers are interested in and see as part of the role. If you're going to private equity, and if there's anyone on the call who is in private equity, if you might not wholly agree, but I would back this quite strongly. Private equity is interested in growth with a view to sale. All right. So they are going to be interested in, can you drive growth, drive transformation, talent, innovation, whatever. They actually probably have very little interest in some of those topics that a corporate board would be interested in. Likewise, if you went to government, they they're very interesting in the fact that they don't like resumes or CVs, because they're more on the side of the CV that is pumping your tires up too much. All right, because they see that as sort of being too pushy. What they want to do is that your experience and the outcomes of the work you've done speaks for itself.
Mm,
So, for instance, I would, and we're going to come on to achievements and responsibilities. I don't use the expression achievements on a government resume or a government CV. I use the expression outcomes,
mm,
because outcomes suggests more of a process. If you're going to be senior in government, you really need to understand policy exceptionally well. And it's always a team effort. It's always a team effort, because you can't do it on your own. You've got people who are helping doing the background work to develop policy. So um, it's all about saying who is going to read this and what are going to be the things that hook them in.
Mm. And John, even with
So
government, I've seen that, so they have a word limit. It's if they have very specific instructions on what they want and what they're looking for. And if you don't listen to those rules, they will
yeah,
discount you because you can't
yeah,
follow orders. It's
that's right.
very,
I
very
mean,
prescriptive. Yeah.
in the Queensland government, that's always they want a copy of your CV and no more than 2-page cover letter,
Mm, mm,
outlining the relevant, basically your relevance to the role.
mm.
Um, and it's amazing how many people can't follow that instruction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and as you say, Angela, you're absolutely right. If you don't follow that instruction, they won't look at it.
Mm,
It's quite,
yep.
they'll say lack of attention to detail, lack of ability to follow process.
Mm,
They're all for them. They're negative indicators.
mm. So we're probably
Um,
saying what, two or three versions of, you probably want one CV, one resume. And then if you've got, like, if we take this back to HR for a second, if you've got a really strong background in ER and reward or comp, you would maybe have four. So one CV, one resume for ER, and then another for reward. Would that sort of be?
Potentially, I I mean, you can break it down within, obviously, functional areas.
Mm,
Um, if I'm looking, my first view is what market are you going to? All
mm,
right, because what I do with page 2 of the resume is I talk about um, sort of competence in
mm,
effect. So, for instance, if I use an MD or a CEO role as an example, I would put down, depending upon the market, obviously, again, but if they're going for a corporate CEO role, I'd be looking at growth. I'd want to know about transformation. I'd want to know about potentially understanding and change within supply chain, digital, AI. All right, these, and work, stakeholder management again.
mm,
So key competencies, and then attributing um, achievements to each of those, plucking them from various parts of my career. Obviously, the most relevant is the most recent.
mm,
So I might say, for instance, the person's worked for Unilever, um, I don't know, Carlton United Brewing, and um, Woolworths. All right. Say, for instance, I had an achievement I wanted to list. I would say at Carlton United, and then list it.
mm,
Next one might be at Unilever, and write it.
mm, mm,
And each of those achievements would be no more than, I try to aim for being less than 2 lines long.
mm. See,
Okay?
I struggle to digest that type of profile, but if you've done the job on the first page, then it makes that easier because you've got the
Absolutely,
context. Yeah, because some people
absolutely.
just dive straight into that without the background, and you're like, well, hang on, was this 20 years ago? When was this? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that makes sense.
That's why that career summary at the beginning, which
Yeah,
provides, where, what role, the dates,
yeah,
actually a headline around the company. So, ASX listed $4 billion company in the XYZ market.
mm,
And then a couple of lines of, you know, chief people officer leading a team of 55 across 12 countries, so that sort of scope.
mm,
And then
mm,
the achievements, which have got to be balanced, say, across those 6 or 7 um, key areas of interest.
yeah.
And I'll probably put three achievements in each.
Mm. Because I think like what people do as well, like especially if you work for a company, um, Actually, it goes both ways. If you're working for a company that no one's really heard of much in the market because it's quite niche, I have seen where people just put the company name, no explanation as to what it is, and then just, list out the job description. It's just not engaging. There's not enough, like, it's not enough of the right detail. It's a waste of space, but also that then requires me to go to Google and find out who this company is, how big they are, where they are, what they do. No one's got time for that. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah, I think a lot of people do miss that quick summary on the company. And say, for example, like I'm working with a global company now in finance that's 15,000 globally, but they're only 300 here. I mean, again, like you would just assume, oh, that's a big company, but it's here, it's not. So you need that context.
yeah, and also as well, sometimes we think about brands or companies, and but we don't really know the scale of their
Mm,
operations wherever
no.
you are in the world. I mean, if I sort of said to somebody, now, okay, Compass Group, what do you know
Mm,
about what do you know about Compass Group?
mm,
You know, um, it's about people go, oh yeah, yeah, I recognize that. But do you know what they do? Do you know how big they are? Um, they are massive global business, um, but they're not that big here, really,
mm,
because
mm.
the market's a lot smaller than North
The UK
America,
or the
Asia.
US, yeah. Should we do the next poll or
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
the balance of, yeah, should we do that one?
yeah.
How are we going for time? Oh yeah, oh my God, it's already okay. Oh my gosh, I should say. Right. What should be the balance of responsibilities versus achievements? Oh, it comes back to again, like who's the audience, what we talked about earlier.
There's a degree of that, I have to
Yeah,
say.
but oh, I'm letting people vote.
Yeah, you could stop leading the audience.
Ah, all right, if it's nearly done, Mel's gonna let us know. Oh, I'm going number three. What's the results? Let's go. Yes. What's right, John?
Um,
What's right?
um, Look, is there a right answer or a wrong answer? Let me tell you my preference. Um,
Mm,
I go all achievements in everything except government
mm,
and not for profit. Because my experience has been is that um, those are sectors that um, like that being included. All right.
mm,
Now that
mm,
could be under particularly. It's easier with government because you can just put a larger um, sort of section of scope, I suppose, under under which departments you've worked for, if
mm,
it's government departments, um, and not for profit as well, like that as well, just to understand, because there's lots of small not for profits, and they just like a bit more detail.
mm,
But someone said to me many years ago, um, and this guy was certainly no fool. He said to me, John, we all have responsibilities. He said it's what we do with them that matter.
mm,
All right. So at the end of the day, people are looking for outcomes. They want to know, particularly in the executive market, what are you bringing to the table? What if I hire you and pay you this really good package? What's my return on investment?
mm, mm,
Okay, what am I getting? So what is your track record of delivering outcomes or achievements? I mean, it's the same thing. It's just in a way, it's just a nuance of expression. Um,
yeah.
but so if I'm working with somebody who is looking to be in the corporate markets, um, or absolutely private equity, it's about outcomes,
Mm, mm,
right? And when I see a resume with, you know, a list of 10 responsibilities and then eight um, achievements during that period of time, I'm just saying to myself, you could have summarized the scope of your role in a lot less than all of those
Mm,
bullet points.
mm,
Um, and you're wasting space.
yeah,
Because I read responsibilities and go, blah, blah, blah.
yeah, yeah.
And people might think that's a harsh view to take, but I'm looking at it, having sat on the other side of the table, as an executive recruiter, I'm interested in what you've done,
Mm,
all right, what you've achieved, not necessarily that you were responsible. People sort of say responsible for, um, uh, I don't know, remuneration management. So what? And this is what
or
this guy just said to me. He said, read the line and say, ask yourself, so what?
yeah.
Sort of, because also when we talk about differentiation, everybody else applying for that role can probably say the same thing.
Mm,
So it
mm,
doesn't stand out. It's just you just become bland.
yeah, yeah. Okay. I think where are we at with? I'm just going to go back to my slides, John. Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Okay. If there's anything, I'm going to go into, I've got some stuff on the market that I can quickly cover. We're at 142. So is there anything else we want to cover, John, before I do that? Or maybe I'll go into my bit and then we can circle back. What's best?
Yeah, no, I don't look at this stage. I don't think so. The one thing I would say is someone said to me, and actually sort of put it on LinkedIn recently, saying, "Whatever you do, don't write your own resume." Um, and sort of from a biased point of view, I could probably agree with that. But the reality is if you are seriously looking to change career, and um, you know, even if you get someone to review it, all right, who knows what they're doing, that's better than just going in blind and hoping for the best. Because I talk to people that go, I've applied for all these roles and then I'm not even getting a call back. That says to
Mm,
me something's wrong. Um, so um, be willing to invest in getting some help. The flip side of that is, please, please, if you get someone to help you, absolutely send it to a few people to ask for their feedback who know what they're talking about. Please don't just give it to all your mates and say, what do you think? Because you'll get a different answer from all of them. And then what tends to happen is someone says, oh, I've changed it to this, 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 and this. And all it's doing is you're getting the crowd's overall view, all right? And they're not your audience. Your
mm,
audience is one completely different. So if you ask someone to have a look at it, to verify it or check it or give you some feedback, make sure they are part of the audience that you would be looking to approach with this.
mm,
All right. Because your mates are not your audience.
mm. And John, I meant to put a slide up with your contact details. So when we send this around, I'll add your contact details at the end of the slide if anyone wants to reach out for some
Yeah.
help.
Really.
But do you know
And
what? There's a few. There you go.
in the first instance, just as a sort of make life easier for people, either drop me a line through LinkedIn, or send me an email, um, because sometimes I'm not contactable. But as soon as I am, I will get back to you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And some of the things that you've said, like, John, I'll talk about this in a second, actually, about not getting a call back, what's going wrong. And I think sometimes people are they might be applying for the right roles with the wrong CV or
Wrong
applying for the
role.
wrong jobs with the right CV. So, yeah, I'm going to cover that as well, actually. So I'll go into that now. Look, this is just some market insights from Seek. This was about a month ago. So this was comparing July 24 to September 24 with 25. And job growth, you could see recruitment internal was the only category that grew. I think, I mean, this doesn't break down contract roles, Sometimes the data is a little bit hard to trust from my perspective, but look, it's data as it is. So let's just look at it. The biggest thing that I was disappointed to see was sort of that OD category been suffering the biggest decline, which is it's what we've seen this year. But obviously, an increase in recruitment's a positive sign because it means that the market's hopefully warming up a little bit again, because I know that the TA space had been really impacted the past sort of 12, 18 months. So that's that. And then applications have been growing month on month, year on year. So I think last month it was at its highest ever. So application, and I can vouch for this, is very high. So, and then this is just some of the job titles that we're seeing posted. So again, recruitment consultant, HRBP, HR coordinator for the perm market, and then HR advisor. So in terms of what's been recruited, it's very operational. And obviously, John, what you're talking about is much more senior work. So, but I just thought for the HR professionals on the call, this is sort of what we're seeing in the market. So top tips: partner with a good recruiter. This is difficult, I completely understand, but John, you might be able to sort of pipe in with a bit of this. I think a lot of people get into the trap of, so when I try to do this a lot is try to reach out to people when they've applied for the job, even if they're not right, just to have a quick chat. I book 15-minute calls, and that's scheduled in a diary. People know they've got 15 minutes. I think people spend 14 minutes talking at me. They would have no idea whether I was listening or not because they haven't sought any feedback or engagement. And I think people just focus on overselling themselves in a very short period of time and not actually connecting with a human. So I think people do forget, they're in such a rush to tell me how good they are that they forget that I've actually need to remember, engage, and think about how can we work together in the future. So when somebody's just talking at you, it's not a great experience. And this is why I'm just saying, like, the partnering bit is super key because it's a two-way relationship. So I think just remember that. Not all recruiters are built the same, John, are they?
No.
So
And,
you're not.
sadly, it's a profession that's got some outstanding people in it, and it's also got some absolute cowboys in it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I'd say expression: pick a good recruiter in a good firm.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
And I think you'll
and
get that, you kind of get a sense of that when you start talking to them. It's hard just to know what good looks like on LinkedIn. Sorry, I've just quickly jumped ahead there. So, okay, so that's that. And actually, it's funny because I've just written here in my notes, like a client will ask me, what's that person like? And I could say to them, they're great at talking about themselves, but that's all I can tell you at this point. So yeah, look, understanding how the tech works. So this was the next slide, actually, really quickly. So when people put adverts onto LinkedIn, you get these sort of like screening questions. And then there's this thing where, I mean, this shouldn't really apply to too many people on this call, but just FYI, you can auto archive applicants who are outside of the country, and you can just send them an automatic reply. So if you are thinking of applying for roles outside of Australia, or if you're outside of Australia trying to look for roles here, and you're not getting anywhere, that could be why. So that's sometimes not just about the CV. And then so talking about cover letters, when you upload a CV or resume to a system, you can't upload two. You can generally only one makes it to me, and the system will sometimes choose. So I would say if you do want to have a cover letter, you've got to make it one document so that we get both. And this is a CV that's PDF'd. I've obviously taken out the identifying information. If you don't PDF your CV through Seek, this is what happens. So I've got here a blue circle with a person in AI generated content may be incorrect. Like, this is how it looks when I'm viewing it on the left. And then again on the right, the font's all over the place. It's big, small. It's really unpredictable. So I would recommend PDFing all your CV, resume, and cover letters. So
I also
that's
say,
just, yeah.
I just say, Angela, before you move on as well, that resume, and I hope it's not someone who's on this call, that professional summary at the top is my example of blah, blah, blah.
Mm, mm.
That doesn't engage me whatsoever.
No, because you've got multiple sectors, learning agility. Yeah, that just could be anyone and anything. Yeah, 100%.
And just a
What do you
list
think?
of,
What do you think about the areas of expertise, though? Is that a waste of space? You should be doing that in a different way.
Well, again, it's like, does that really, when you've got a list that long, does it
Mm,
really differentiate you?
yeah, yeah, it's a good,
Doesn't it-
really good point.
I mean, so far, and I can't see recent highlights, but so far that resume does not engage me whatsoever.
And the danger with this as well, John, I will like this when we're in London with the Hodes guys, is people reading the F shape, and that top bit is the top of the F, capital F.
Yeah,
Like, and that's the key part that attracts people's eyes, and you're losing them from the start.
yeah,
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you, John. Um, yeah, look, even another one here. I'm eager to contribute to a progressive organisation. I think, again, that's not really helping. And then just images on this left one. That's not helpful at all. Okay, so quick few other things. I'm just looking at the time. Um, so right, yeah. So within recruitment, there is automation and there is different types of technology. I've kind of kept away from AI because AI is something completely different to automation, which is what we're mostly looking at in recruitment at the moment. I'm going to try. Yes, yes, right. So I just put in, are there any trends with AI I should know about when applying for a job? And it's just kind of listed out some of these different, recommendations about LinkedIn, baseline requirements. Like, you can use AI to try and keep up to date with what's going on in the market. So you don't have to be an expert, but you can sort of go and find that information yourself, which I highly recommend, maybe just once every couple of months, because there is new tech coming in all the time. Um, Apply following instructions. You'd be amazed at how many people send me a LinkedIn invite to connect applying for a job. I can tell you now, I don't get those. Like, that's not a strategy. Sometimes I might see them by accident, but when I've got 300, 400 invites to connect coming through from all over the world, it's not a good strategy. So I would say always apply following the instructions. And then this quality over quantity point as well, John, we were talking about applying for the wrong roles. I think
yeah.
I was chatting to some colleagues. As soon as I see a profile, I don't know, John, maybe what you would say, but at least 5 times, you start to sort of, it loses its impact. And then you're like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll come back to that. And then, so I'm not saying, oh, definitely apply for the roles that are right for you and that are interesting. But if you over apply, you run the risk of becoming blind to people. Like, I don't even look anymore, which is not ideal, but we're all humans and that's how it works. So that's just one top tip. And then to AI or to not AI. So this is a really interesting space around, does AI write your CV for you? And then you can check it. Do they write the cover letter? Yeah, look, John's shaking his head there. I mean, I heard of, this is nothing to do with HR, but somebody I know had a cover letter that was written by AI. There was something wrong with it. Anyway, they completely rejected the person based on knowing that AI had written the cover letter, which was not the problem. It was the fact that they hadn't checked it to correct it. That was the problem. So, I mean, the only thing I will say about AI is just be smart about how you use it.
Yeah. And just add to that, Angela,
Mm,
talking to a couple of sort of Shrek headhunters recently, and they said to me, they said we can tell it's been written by AI immediately, and if that's the case, we don't even read it.
mm, yeah.
It is literally people are just saying that. Sorry.
Mm,
Um, and in fairness, I've done a bit of an experiment where I've written resumes and then I've asked AI to rewrite them, to be the best.
mm,
And they're garbage, to be honest with
yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, I wouldn't go there. Some people say, well, I struggle to write, so I get AI to do it, and then I change stuff. At the end of the day, AI in this field is it's very much about an aggregator of information.
Mm,
So it's giving you an aggregation of all of the different ways of doing something and trying to put it into one document, and it's just
one.
boring,
Mm,
boring,
yeah. Yeah.
and it's very, very noticeable.
It is noticeable. I agree. I don't have an
One day,
example of
one
it.
day it might not be. One day it might
Yeah.
not be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No, it is. It's getting better. It is getting better.
yeah,
And then what else? I'm just checking the time. Right, we've got a little bit. So a couple more slides. Follow up. So I've read here timing and how. I mean, I this does happen to me. I get 500 applications for a head of HR. I get the application, they follow up with an email, they sent me a LinkedIn invite and a note. Like it's like then 500 times by five is a lot. So and then it takes me forever to get to, to catch up, do all the admin. So I think the timing bit is do it, but time it and don't do it all at once. And John, I think, even for us recruiters, when we're doing the business development side of our role, which is going out to get the business, what you want to do is just get the job done and then move on. But that's not how life works. You have to do the follow up, but you've got to do it at the right time. So, yeah,
The,
so I would definitely think that through.
yeah, and I think it's about it's very difficult, and putting yourself on the side of the recruiter, who's obviously, and particularly in the what I call the mid market, you're probably dealing with half a dozen plus roles at any one time. So you can then time that by six or eight,
Yeah.
so you can get overload really quickly. Certainly in the exec market, um, I'd always put my phone number on if it was advertised, and I'd always take those calls. And actually, um, strange enough, even though at times it was like, every 5 minutes the phone was going, someone who rang me first and said, "Hi, John, look, I've seen the ad for this role. Can I just give you a quick 2 minute précis of me and tell me whether you think it's worth me applying?"
Oh, that's a good approach.
I mean, that is just, those people are manna from heaven,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
can say, "Okay, tell me about yourself," blah, blah, blah. And if I honestly felt, you know, the client said they specifically want financial services or whatever, and they've never done it, I say, "Look, the chances are you're not going to get past first base."
Mm,
All right.
mm,
Because the client has been adamant they want financial services experience and you don't have it.
mm,
So
mm.
my advice to you is don't waste your time.
Yeah, yeah. And this is the how bit, right? And I'm going to put email versus calling. Generationally, probably, John, I'm in the middle, but you love a call. Whereas, you know, somebody else in
I'm a
my
boomer.
team, she
I'm a
she
boomer.
hates the calls. She's like, don't call me, don't call me. So look, and I think that's where it's really hard to gauge is like, how people respond. So I think you just need to be aware of that. Some people do not like being called, and some people love having a call. So I know you can't always guess that, but yeah, maybe try and balance that out. The other thing too is, John, I don't know about you, but long emails, I do not read long emails. And this is not just about recruitment. This is even friends and family. You get that long email and you're like, oh, I'll read that later. And then later never comes like, because you just run out of time. So I would always say, if you write an email, maybe get AI to cut it in half, or maybe cut it in half yourself. But yeah, I would say do not send long emails because they're just less likely to be read.
Yeah. I mean, it's a rule I would say to people is throughout the recruitment process, be brief and concise.
Mm, yeah.
In everything you do, whether it's an email, whether it's a resume, whether it, you know, you don't write how you talk, because some people can, basically fill a vacuum very quickly with words. Um, you know, get your message over in a concise fashion that's brief.
Mm,
Again, it's thinking about the person who's receiving it, and understanding the amount of time they actually have.
yeah. And John, it's almost like you knew my last slide. So this is it. Promise, last one. So final note. I think, yeah, coming back to what we were talking about earlier is connecting with people. Don't underestimate the value of that. And then I don't know if any of you have seen this chap, Vin Yang. He's an Australian guy. I think he's lived in the US for a bit. He's been interviewed by Jay Shetty and on the Diary of a CEO and stuff. I was just on LinkedIn this morning. He comes up in my feed all the time, but this one I listened to this morning, the six powerful mindset shifts, is really really interesting. And he says, in any conversation or meeting, think about how you want the other person to think, feel, or act or do. And I think going back to what I was saying at the start about partnering with a good recruiter, when people have a call with me, they don't think about that. They just think about what they need to say in the time. So, and then he just talks about, I mean, nerves is more about presenting, but it's actually quite relevant probably in an interview that, you really want the job. He talks about rambling, negativity, being boring, interviews, and immersion. So covers the interviews bit. The being boring bit is interesting because he said, some people think, oh, well, payroll, for example, could be really boring, but we'll try and make it a bit fun then, like bring in some personal stories or make yourself and it a bit more interesting. I don't know, maybe ask AI how to do that. It'll probably have some good suggestions. But that's it. I think that's it. Oh my gosh, we're on time. We're just maybe 1 minute over. So,
Can I just
huge thank you,
can I just
John.
say
You
one
go. Yeah.
just one thing very quickly if people are still on the call? If you're in the market and you're looking, trust me, I empathize with the situation you're in the current market, and the market is difficult for job seekers. Um, it's hard. It can be depressing. It can feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall. Okay. My advice to you is if you keep doing the same thing and you expect a different result, you are mad.
Mm,
All right. So don't just keep doing the same thing. Say to yourself, what do I need to do differently to get myself noticed in a positive way? um,
yeah, yeah.
so, just think about that, because the biggest red flag for me is when someone rings me up and say, oh, I've applied for 45 jobs in the last month. That's about 4 red flags, actually. But and I haven't even had a call back.
Mm,
If that's happening to you, you're doing something wrong.
mm. Very
So
good.
do something
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. All right. I will share, John. Yeah, I'll share your details. I'll
Thank
add
you.
change the slide and get this out. So the session's recorded. We'll begin sending that out to people as well. And
2 sessions and the
yeah, thank
Q&A.
you. Oh, is there? Do you know what, Mel? I can't see. Oh, I couldn't see the Q&A. Let me quickly do it. What is a good summary then? What is interesting to read or good question, John?
It very much depends upon the individual. I think it's how you express some of the things. It's the words you use, and this is where sometimes people read what I write the first time and go, "Oh," So I might use an expression like, "So and so is brought into companies to solve the problems that others haven't, or have, into areas where people have feared to tread." So that catches someone's attention. Now, some people might go, "Oh, blimey," that's, but it's, doing a shopping list of I'm a blah and I've done blah in blah and blah and I've done blah and I've done blah and blah and I want to do blah. It's like, great. So does a
Mm,
million other people. How do you gain attention? Now, the person I wrote that for to start with was like, blimey, that's a bit strong. I said, is that what you do? And he said, yes. I said, so it's the truth.
mm.
you know um he was the one that we ended up writing his referees would say,
Oh, okay.
because,
Yep, yep, yep.
because then he could take that phrase and go, yeah, okay, I'm happier with that. It was just dealing with his own
Mm,
feelings about saying that about himself. But if you put that referees would say in front of it, then it's becomes
yeah.
palatable.
And then,
So
John, I think it's hard to quickly off the top of your head. Like I know I've read a couple of profiles recently, and you're like, oh, that's a good summary. So if I come across one of those, Catherine, I'll pop it into the slides. I'll have a look for it tonight. But yeah, so it's
and
something that's a little bit unusual, but still honest.
yeah, what I'd say to Catherine is, um, if you read yours and it's and you think it sort of like sounds like everybody else's, and you're struggling, um, I mean, you can get in touch with me, and I'll give you a hand. The interesting what I say to all the people I write their resumes, I say the first person I want you to read this is your partner,
Mm,
wife, partner, whoever, person who knows you best, and say to them, read that and say, is that me?
mm,
And if they say, yeah, that's you, then we've nailed it, because
mm,
they know you better than anyone. If they say, oh my God, no, that's not you at all, we've missed the mark and we need to
mm.
back. For me, it's the acid test. Um, of that profile summary.
Mm. And one of the other, somebody else said, John, can you provide us with a couple of examples of engaging career summaries, which is kind of what we've been talking about. But this is where it's hard because I go for factual because I
Yep.
that's my style. But the whole problem is I'm not the audience always. Like who is the audience is the question. So yeah.
But the interesting thing is you can be factual but gain attention.
Okay.
I mean that expression that I just used is not factual. It's absolutely
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
the way it's expressed.
Mm, mm. All right, sorry, I missed those questions. The Q&A didn't show up on my screen, so sorry about that. But thank you, everyone. Everyone, most of you stayed on, so I really appreciate it because I know it's 2:06. But yeah, thank you, John. All right, so we'll get all the recording done over the next couple of days. I'll update the slides with your contact details, and we'll see you soon, I hope, in the new year.
Yeah. Look forward to it, Angela. And thank you to everyone that's listened in today. Hope you found it useful.
Great. All right, take care, everyone. Bye.
Cheers. Bye now.